For over 40 years, the Sundance Film Festival has been held on the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Shoshone, Paiute, Gojute, and Ute tribal nations. We do land acknowledgements to recognize the traditional stewards of this land and our 500 years of resistance to ongoing colonialism. But can we acknowledge the land without listening to the land? Take a moment to really listen. From the Ute to the Wet'suwet'en, from the Anishinaabe to the Kingdom of Hawaii, indigenous nations all over the world understand that the land does not belong to us. We belong to the land. And we continue to fight for her. Let this land acknowledgement move you beyond symbolic recognition. Let it be your call to action. Support indigenous resistance. Join us in the fight to protect our mother, for our human and non-human kin, for the next 7 generations.
Welcome to the Sundance Film Festival. My name is Dilcia Barrera, and I'm a programmer for the festival, and it's my honor to introduce today's Cinema Cafe presented by Audible. Our special guests today are Dakota Johnson and Keke Palmer. Do not miss the opportunity to see their films here at Sundance. Dakota stars in 2 films at the festival, Cha-Cha Real Smooth and Am I Okay? And Keke stars in Alice, screening in our US dramatic competition. We're extremely proud to be presenting these films at Sundance. And of course, we'd like to thank Hannah Giorgis for moderating this morning. Hannah is a staff writer at The Atlantic who covers culture. Her essays and reporting have also appeared in The New York Magazine, The New Yorker, Bon Appetit, Pitchfork, and BuzzFeed. We're so thankful to have her join us today. Please do not forget, we have many other conversations taking place here throughout the week, and I encourage you to check out the schedule on our websites in the Beyond Film tab. Thank you so much. And now I hand it over to Hannah.
Thank you, Dilcia, and welcome to Cinema Cafe, everyone. I'm so excited to speak with our guests today. First, we have Dakota Johnson.
Hi.
Hey. And Keke Palmer.
Hello.
Hey, y'all. Dakota, Keke, thank you both so much for joining me today. We are on day 5 of Sundance. How are y'all feeling?
I'm feeling good. I mean, I wish I was in person, but it's good to see you guys over the virtual stratosphere.
Yeah, I've spent the last 5 days on just staring at people on my computer. It's bizarre.
Yeah, Yeah, this is not how human beings are supposed to interact, but
No.
thanks for bearing
No.
with me and for bearing with all of this, y'all. Dakota, I'd love to start with you for a second. You've got two films in this year's festival, Am I Okay and Cha Cha Real Smooth. Can you tell us a bit about both of them?
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. I haven't been to Sundance since I was like 22 or something, and these are the first two movies that my production company made, and we made them both during during the pandemic that we're still in. And the first one that we made was Am I Okay? And it's directed by Tig Notaro and Stephanie Allen, who are married, and they are it's like a comedy. It's in the genre of comedy, but it's about a woman coming out in her 30s, coupled with a sort of female friendship narrative. And then Cha Cha Real Smooth is directed by Cooper Raiff, who is 24, and he made a movie called Shit House that won South by Southwest a few years ago. And he sadly has never been to a festival because he started making movies during the pandemic. So
Wow.
it's really sad. But that one is about a kid who comes home from college and he gets a job as a party starter at bar mitzvahs and falls in love with a mother of an autistic girl. Then those are the movies.
How did those come to you, and what drew you to producing those two?
The one with Tig and Stephanie directing, I hopped onto that as a producer when I signed on to star in it. It was like the early days of my company, and we everything else that we were making was pushed and pushed because of the pandemic. And this one, we had started to we were going to shoot it before we shut down. We were supposed to start shooting like the week of when everything started to happen. So we sort of like I basically just forced my company upon everybody. I was like, if you want me to be in the movie, then you have to let me produce it. And I think they were like, fine. But then we ended up like casting a few great people, and then we had to recalibrate and like pare things down so that we weren't in very public places and we were in more contained places, and that was like great. And then Cha Cha, my producing partner Ro had a meeting with Cooper, and she said she loved him and that I would love him and to watch Shit House, so I did. And have you seen Shit House?
I haven't, but apparently I need to.
It's really great. It's like he made it for $0, and he wrote it and directed it and starred in it and edited it and produced it. He's like an annoyingly gifted person.
And you said he's 24.
And he's 24, and he's super charming and super smart and like so soulful and rare. I think it's rare to find young men who are so soulful. And so that one I met with, what was that?
He sounds very Gen Z.
Yes, very Gen Z. Very Gen Z. That's what we were like, oh, this is gonna communicate to a lot of people, this energy, this vibe. So we met with him, and he said he had this idea. It was like a seedling of an idea called Cha Cha Real Smooth, and then he wrote it, and then we went back and forth and like really fleshed out the female characters and developed that from the beginning. So the Cha Cha really has our DNA all over it.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and soulful is the right word. That's the word that really comes through when you're watching it, right? Not just in how the characters relate to each other, but even the way it's lit, the way they move.
I'm assuming it has something to do with Cha Cha Real Smooth.
Yeah.
Not it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
The Cha Cha slide.
Yeah, that's the real party starter.
Yep.
Keke, you star in Alice, which is a thriller in which an enslaved woman escapes from a Georgia plantation and then discovers it's actually 1973. But you're also in the upcoming horror film Nope. What do you like about horror? What draws you to it?
You know, it's interesting. People keep calling Alice a thriller. I don't know if I would have, really considered it that myself. But it's interesting to hear how other people perceive it. To me, it's more of a, kind of fish out of water, a self-discovery type of film. But with, to answer your other question about my love for horror, it started very young. I'm a big fan of horror as far as, watching it. I loved it. You know what I mean? You thinking about the last standing woman. I think about Jamie Lee Curtis, who's one of my absolute favorites. I got to work with her on Scream Queens. And the thing I love about horror is that if a horror is done, and obviously right is subjective, but in my mind, if a horror is done, quote unquote, right, it's going to have the elements of every kind of movie. You're going to have comedy. You're going to have, drama. You're going to have romance. You're going to have a thrilling and suspenseful aspect. So if you get it really right, then it's kind of like a movie that has all the things that everyone loves. You're even going to have action in there. So I think that's why I love horror, is because it really has the potential to just be a limitless genre. And I think Jordan Peele obviously does a really incredible job with that. So I'm just as excited for Nope as I was for Alice.
And there's something so visceral about horror, right? And it pulls out so much from you as you're watching. Did you feel
Absolutely.
that, like, as you were working on both of them, did you feel, I don't know, like a shift in yourself, or did you feel the material like challenging you?
I definitely think the material both challenged me. When I think about the material for Alice, it challenged me in a way of, also personal, kind of dipping back into the past in terms of my ancestors and kind of the horrors of, the Black American history. That was obviously challenging to be able to step in and out of that space and not allow it to bog me down. But the material of the work of Alice also is very empowering. The perspective in which that the story lived and where Alice lived was able to balance out a lot of that, hardship. I think more than anything with Alice, I was very much so in a fighter kind of mindset, survival mode. That was very much so. And then with Nope, obviously I can't tell you too much of what the movie's about, but I was really needing to stretch, as I said before, as it comes to my performance. It was not just one particular vibe, whereas at least with Alice, she kind of exists in this space either of curiosity, survival. And I think for my character Nope, there's a little bit more, there's more shifts because obviously she's not somebody that just came out of slavery. So that's a total different mindset.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought to think of Alice as a coming of age story, and yet there's something in there about that shift.
Yeah, I would say more like self-discovery, redefining, your narrative, who you are, as a young person, as a woman, as an individual, really. And I think especially, obviously in the framework of Alice, as a minority as well, because our narrative is so often told from the eyes of the oppressor. And it's easy to just get this point of view that's very like, oh, I feel bad for you, or, oh my gosh, that's horrible, as opposed to this is what it is. And I'm not, I don't feel sorry for myself. And I don't think anybody Black feels sorry for themselves. We know what's going on and we just keep it pushing. You know what I mean? That's what you have to do.
Yeah. Is that a key part of how you choose what you want to work on, like those kinds of projects?
I'm sorry, repeat it one more time, Anna.
Sure. Is that a key part of how you choose what you want to work on? Because it feels like it comes through in a lot of the roles that you play.
Yes, I do. I think, starting out so young as I did, it really did shape the way that I viewed roles, obviously as a kid. And I think it's important too, for, when it comes to child actors, you do need to be very careful of the kinds of roles that you choose, because everything kind of meshes into the idea of who you're deciding to be subconsciously, because you don't know who you are. You don't have a clear concept of identity. So the roles you play influence you wildly. And I'm very grateful that my parents were so protective, because most of the roles that I played, which obviously very specifically chosen by my mother at that time, because I was a kid, were very empowering stories, empowering stories that put me in a position of, even if I am the underdog, I'm coming out on top, and, inspirational stories and things of that sort. So I think, starting from that point and growing into being an adult, entertainer, I definitely kept that, idea of, I really want to make sure that my roles are purposeful and impactful. And the way that I see art is also a version of my activism. So most definitely would I choose roles knowing how people view me and knowing, just as a voice of my community, I'm very conscious of how that role will be perceived. What is it saying and how does it make me feel?
Absolutely. And Dakota, I was thinking a bit about.
Wait, can I ask a question for Keke? So how old were you when you started making movies?
I was 9. I was 9 years old.
And your mom would choose what you would go out for, and that's really amazing.
Yes. Yes, she was very critical about it, actually, because she was really afraid of, me being influenced incorrectly or putting out it's so interesting, for me to do a role like Alice. I feel like it was just coming in my life because my parents are so like that. They always talk to me about, being a young Black person, you need to make sure that everything you do, that's in the back of your mind, that people are watching. Obviously, that's a very big responsibility, and it's complex as it pertains to art, because obviously everybody views art so differently, and you don't want to be bogged down to one idea like, oh, I can only play superheroes, right? But there's a fine line in that of, if you're going to do a role, even if it is complex and people might be jarred by it, can you talk about why you did it? Can you give a good perspective of why you chose that? And so they were very strict about that, and I think it really did help me.
That's so cool. What amazing guidance to have.
Yes.
Yeah. I did a movie when I was 9.
Really? Seriously.
But my mom was in it.
Wow. What movie? Which movie? Obviously, I'm a fan of your mom.
It's called Crazy in Alabama, and I played her daughter, and my stepdad directed it. So I guess it was kind of the same thing, but
yes, it is the same thing, except your parents was able to put it all together. Thank God.
Yeah. But then I didn't work again until I was 18. They wanted me to not be involved in movies.
Yeah. I'm glad you found your way back to it, though.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me
too. How'd you find your way back?
I wanted to work. I was desperate to be on set. I wanted to make movies so badly. And I think they wanted me to study, and they wanted me to have a proper education. They wanted me to, my dad really wanted me to go to college. He wanted some kind of, I think he wanted me to be some kind of a scholar, and I really was not interested because I grew up on set. I grew up traveling. I was always on location with them. And when they split, I was between the two weeks with one and then 2 weeks, and they'd be all over the world. And so I never learned how to study correctly or how to time management and how to sit in a classroom. It was so hard for me, but I was obsessed with books, and I was obsessed with film, and I was obsessed with the world and with people. And so when I graduated, I wanted to work, and I started auditioning and got some jobs.
You being obsessed with books works so perfectly with where I was first introduced to you with 50 Shades of Grey. So I'm like, oh yeah, so she likes, yeah, that's so cool. You love books, yeah. That some of the greatest stories are in books, if not all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the last film, I want to ask you about Am I Okay and Cha-Cha in a second, but the last film that you were in for this, or that we saw you in, was The Lost Daughter, which is Maggie Gyllenhaal's adaptation of the famous Elena Ferrante novel, right? And so that film, I mean, how did you come to Ferrante's books, right? What do you love about those?
Well, I read the Neapolitan series because I went to an all-girls Catholic boarding school for 1 year in Northern California, and it was horrible. But there was this one girl who was my best friend. Her name's Justine, and she's the one she gave me the first of the novels later in our 20s. And so that's how I knew about Elena Ferrante. And then I watched the My Beautiful Friend show, which I found to be so beautiful, so beautiful. And then I read Maggie's script, and it was less about Elena Ferrante. It was more about Maggie for me. She's just such a force and real seeker of truth, and I was like beckoned by it. I was so intrigued, and she's so powerful. Her mind is really powerful, and her heart is just intricate. And I learned so much. Like Keke was saying, there's so much discovery that happens when you do a role, that's mostly the reason why I choose things, is like, oh, this is gonna really teach me something, or I'm drawn to it for a reason that I can't explain, but it's like stretching into the depths of myself in a way, like reaching into the far corners of my heart or my mind. And there's a whole different woman in there.
Yeah. Wonderful way to put it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. I remember reading a while ago that you'd said The Lost Daughter was working on that was a new experience for you, in the sense that it was your first time being directed by someone who's also an actor.
Yeah.
What did that feel like? Like, how did that change the experience for you?
Well, Scott Cooper was an actor before he was a director, which he likes to tell people. But it's different being directed by a female actor. And I think it's because there is a different, well, I don't know. I guess in this specific environment, because we were like a lot of the time on the beach in bathing suits, and like, because it was so much about the intricate and complicated feelings around motherhood, and Maggie is a mother, but she's also like a fucking amazing actress. And she knows what it feels like to be an actor acting. It can be so exposing and so vulnerable and so confusing, like you can feel so lost. And I think she really understands how that feels, and also is able to hold you and guide you. And so there's like an empathy, I think, that she has, or an understanding that she has. She also has her own special ways of finding a character and finding moments that were so helpful. But yeah, I think when to have a woman who knows what it feels like to be in front of the camera in a very exposed way, whether it's emotionally or physically, was really cool.
I think that's so true. That to me is the strongest thing about working with a director that's an actor, is that they understand the feeling. They understand how it feels to be there, to be in that moment, to try to find that hurt, the empathy, 1000%. But then there's the other side. Sometimes if you want a little bit more, I find that sometimes when somebody is just a director, they're more descriptive with their words. And so it's sometimes a little bit easier in that regard, because they don't know how to feel it and they don't know how to emote it. So they just say it. And sometimes that can be a little bit, it's helpful because it's more analytical, but they both have their strong suits.
Yeah, for sure.
There's something really beautiful I remember you reading you say about that film, Dakota, that was about women's reactions to it when they watch it. And I've been thinking about that as you talk about the experience of working with Maggie, but just that intensity, that sense of finding something about yourself, something about this experience through feeling vulnerable, through feeling something that can be difficult. And I remember the quote, something to the effect of, "After it hurts, they love it." And I remember being curious about what films have had that effect on you. Like, have there been works that have been difficult for you in the experience of watching them, or even of being part of them, but that you find yourself coming through the other side as a viewer, as part of it, changed, and sort of having an appreciation for it?
Yeah. I think when I'm watching films and it hurts, usually it's because I love it. I think the most recent one, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie, The Worst Person in the World.
No, sounds
Norwegian film. It is like, oh my God, it's so brilliant. It's so brilliant. And it wrecked me. I was crying in a way that was like weird. I was trying to make it less than what it was meant to be. I was trying to
Ah,
not cry as hard as my body wanted to cry. And I don't know why. And I don't remember the last time I like wept in a film, but I did. And then I think also on set, like I always have a hard time when I'm making movies. It's never like, oh, that was so easy, you know, because I really care so much that I'll like really fight for something and I'll really want to understand something. And uh, I, I don't know. I think I just like it hurts when you birth something. So that happens to me all the time.
Keke, has that been your experience too?
I get what she's saying. When any movie you do, there's some level of something. I'm usually having some level of stress, even if I'm doing a comedy, because I care so much. But in regards to like, there are two particular roles that I think about to answer your question more specifically of that I felt, it's beautiful, even though it hurts, was definitely a movie I did called Pimp. That movie was so emotionally taxing, you know what I mean, to put myself in the mental framework of someone that is just living in such a hopeless reality. It's a total opposite of what I did with Alice, even though Alice was also extremely painful as well, but in a different way, because Alice is from a perspective of hope and faith, and this other character was the opposite. Their outlook on life was, totally the effects of a response to that movie. So it was just very draining. I remember being just almost forgetting who I was after the filming of that movie. And then when I go back to it and I find my way back to it, I'm like, that was a good movie. It was intense though. And it was sad. So sometimes like Dakota was saying, when a movie evokes that much emotion out of you, you know that it's good. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to watch it a million times, but just to know that something has made you feel, that is the point of art. It's just like a painting. You don't want to look at a painting on a wall and say, oh, cute, and walk off. You want to say, wow, what does this mean? Wow, how does this feel? So anytime I'm a part of something like that, or I watch something like that, I feel like that's what it's about.
When you're in those moments and it feels difficult, or you find yourself, like what you said just now, like almost feeling like you're losing parts of yourself, how do you get back? Like, are there people who guide you, who help you, like who have been the folks who've gotten you through that?
Man, some breaks. Honestly, I take some breaks and try to switch it up a little bit. I think, that's why it's like, oh, Keke, she's always doing something. And it's because I'm such a creative and I love to perform and act, but also my emotions are a part of this. So sometimes that's too draining. So I have to find other outlets to still be creative and to still access that part of myself without totally damaging my emotions to the point of no return. And when you do lose yourself in roles. I remember hearing that as a kid. People would say, oh, so and so took a break 5 years, and I'm like, why would anyone want to take a break from acting? This is great. And then as I got older and I started continuing to do that and perform that, I started to realize this is a muscle and I cannot overuse it. I cannot abuse it. And so I became much more careful of when I was going to go there, why I was going to go there, if I felt that it was worth it to go there. Is this purposeful? Am I just doing this for the sake of I'm an actor? You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, I still want to have pieces of me left at the end of this. And I specifically remember after Alice, in my bedroom, looking around my New York apartment and just thinking about Alice's life. And I just started to cry as if she was a real person to me. And I'm like, Alice never had this. Alice, and then as I started to cry, I started to remind myself, well, that's why I'm living. That's why I'm getting to do what I do today. That's why I am happy. That's why I choose to live freely, because of Alice. And so I was able to kind of help myself get out of that and realize, okay, we're separate. Let's find the breakage here, but it happens. This being an actor it's an insane job. It's an insane job.
Yeah, I can't imagine. There's a moment just thinking about your creative pursuits and all the different ways that can go, that I remembered you also published a book last year.
Me.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. I'm talking about Southern Belle insults.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Can you tell us like
what was your book?
So on my Instagram page, I started to create mini characters. Like I would use it on like a sketch, my page, like a sketch page where I would try different characters for comedy, just to express, my art. And so I came up with this character named Lady Miss Jacqueline, who's this Southern belle that always insults. And so the original sketch was Southern Belle insults. And it was just this character, Lady Miss, who would always insult this character Janet. And, I started doing it maybe like 6-7 years ago, and it's just continued to grow and grow. And so eventually, thankfully, Amazon reached out to me to do a part of their short stories collection of the Lady Miss life. What is the story? What is the background story behind that sketch? And so I got to do that last year, and it was a lot of fun. Again, that's why I say I'm the kind of person where something that is my hobby, it ends up becoming something else, but it's a way just for me to express. I guess some people could call it ADHD, borderline personality, or a bunch of other mental things, but I know my parents gave me a place that I could be myself. And that was entertainment, that was acting, that was stage, that was, that's my biggest therapy. So, I'm very grateful to know and have that, because if I did not have that ability to focus that energy somewhere, I don't know who I'd be or where I'd be, honestly.
Yeah, what was it like deepening your craft in this different way, right? Like working with Jasmine Guillory, like learning, or just pushing yourself on a different kind of expression?
It was challenging. I think I'm the kind of person that deals with anxiety very much so head on. I'm aware that it's happening, and I just kind of tackle it, so I definitely did feel that during the creating of it, because I wanted to be great. I'm a Virgo, I'm a perfectionist. So I really wanted to do my best. But more than anything, I think it's, what's the word I'm looking for? It's, I guess I can lightly say it's a learning experience. Ultimately, that's what I look to all of these scenarios for, is that I'm going to learn, I'm going to be transformed. And if there's one thing I'm open to more than anything, is to be transformed. So I just embraced, took it one day at a time and moment to moment.
That's something I thought about watching both Am I Okay and Cha Cha Real Smooth, actually. Just the idea of learning like things like what you're doing, yes, but also just who you are at ages that are later than people give us space for, or that are not just like being a teenager. And I was curious about that, watching both those films, Dakota. What drew you to that element, and if there are things that you feel like you're still learning about yourself that came through as you were working on those films.
Yeah, I think I liked the idea, and I guess it is in both of them, that you don't have to have everything figured out by a certain point in your life. Like, it's entirely impossible to do that. And it's so, I think the world would be a much calmer place if people had a little bit more room to just grow and be and change. And so I guess the women that were written in these films are, in a way, like, I guess I always see female archetypes that are fully realized, and I don't identify with that. I'm like, God, I'm never going to be that. And it's interesting with the Lost Daughter, because even like, we were getting reactions from women being like, God, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that it's really hard to be a mother, and it's not always nice, and I don't always like it. But then the other interesting part was men being like, oh, those are the women that I recognize. Like, that is my mom, or that is my partner. It's not this like perfectly happy, buttoned up, gorgeous thing that like I never actually see in real life, because it's not real. So I guess with Cha Cha and Am I Okay, it was women who are alive and like bleeding, beating people. They are thoughtful and discovering themselves. And I think like I'm like that in my life. all the time. When I'm like, oh, okay, cool, I've got this, then something happens and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing at all. So
I always love that about Diane Keaton,
yeah,
obviously. But when you said that, I I totally understand.
yeah, yeah, same. Good call.
Yeah, I wouldn't even have thought of that right now. That there's, there's something about watching both of those films, and again, like knowing that you produce those stories, right, that had me thinking a bit about your working process with your producing partner. And I just would love to hear how the two of you first decided to form Tea Time and sort of what your collaboration looks like. Because I remember like ages, a while back, just reading you talking about your own process or your ideation kind of being this big and amorphous and sometimes hard to latch onto thing. Does
Yeah.
that still feel true? Like, is that a sort of core tenet of how the two of you work together?
Yeah, she's definitely the more grounded of the two of us. I'll be like, we need to do this, and I have this idea. And she's like, okay, let's actually do what is possible. But the thing that we both really believe in is like sticking to the integrity of the story that we set out to tell, and always pushing the boundaries a little bit and never trying to fit into some box or into some like model of what we know to be successful in streaming or cinema. I don't find that to be fulfilling. I also don't find it to be what people want to watch. I think people want to be challenged, and they want to feel like they are experiencing something that maybe exists inside themselves that they haven't looked at before. But we, even in terms of like, how do we deal with COVID and making movies? Like, let's really think outside the box and trust people and believe in people. Like, how do we do this in a way that is still creative, even if it's the most mundane of production activities? And we also really care about continuing, like, building working relationships with people that are recycled. And so we work often with the same DP, same group of grips, same crew, same costume designers, same, and everyone feels like they're on this team where they feel really seen for their creativity and their talents. And then it's like, even if the budget is so low and even if it is so uncomfortable and the hours are insane, everybody works so hard and has such a great time because they feel supported and they feel like they're a part of something, they belong somewhere. And it's so amazing. It's been like, that is the thing that I crave. And I think I find it a lot on sets, but not all the time. There's some sets where like you don't really see anybody at the end of the day and you go home and it's really lonely, or you go back to your hotel room and nobody like really cares about each other. And it happens, and that's fine. But then there are other sets where you find a family and you find people who are like, you're going to know them for the rest of your life, and they touch something in you, and you have a growth together. And that's what I want Tea Time to hopefully do.
You've worked on so much in the time since this pandemic has been happening. I was looking back at everything, how did you manage that?
I don't know. No, I don't know. It's been really crazy. It's like the pandemic started and I didn't stop. I just kept going and didn't stop working. And maybe it's because then I was at home, so I could get so many things done. But then I made 4 movies last year, and it was a lot. It was like way too much, but also so much fun. I don't know. It was nuts, but I just rolled with it.
Keke, did that feel true for you too? Did you feel yourself like pushing through all of this chaos and just getting it done?
Yeah, I think we just had to, you know what I mean? It didn't
Yeah.
stop. I lost some things, you know what I mean? But I also gained some things. And so I just kept rolling with the punches and doing what I could to get done. I mean, filming and trying to get stuff done during COVID and all the, mandates and all that stuff, that was just like, whoa, you know what I mean? But hey, we somehow made it through. So for that, I'm grateful.
Mm.
Yeah, has it felt like a solace or a comfort at all through what is like, an extended global catastrophe?
To work?
Yeah, to work and to have not just work in general. I mean, like we're all lucky to continue having access to work just in general, right? But to have creative spaces that you go to, places to turn to where
Yes.
you're not just working, but doing this as teamwork, as you were saying earlier.
To be around creative people, to be able to express around people that are in the same vibe as you know what I mean? Being on set and discussing with other people that, are feeling the same things you're feeling, but also using the same kind of thing as the same outlet. Absolutely. I feel very grateful for that. I think that was also a big part of the drive. I'm very grateful to do what I love. And that is definitely something that counts even more when the world is going through so much.
Yeah, I definitely felt very privileged, very lucky. Yeah, I find like finding solace in things is a really uh, elusive thing to try to do right now. It's almost like something feels safe and good and then it turns to shit. So I feel pretty depressed about the whole world right now. Kiki's answer was better. Don't focus on me.
No, that's a great answer and very real. I was actually going to ask both of you really like if you find that it's hard to relax into just being a viewer right now or at all in general, right? Like, do you find yourself thinking about the mechanics of what you're watching or like work, like as an actor, as a producer, as people who know this industry when you want to just relax and enjoy something that you're watching?
It varies. That's how I enjoy it. I think I watched Hand of God last night, and it's so crazy beautiful, that film. Just so beautiful that I, at some moments, would have to stop it and rewind it and watch something again. But that's how I love movies. But then there's also shows like Succession that I watch and I can disappear into it. It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. I'm a big TV person. I love movies. So usually when I'm going to watch them, I am using them to escape. So I would not try to deprive myself of, with everything going on, I try to watch something that's going to allow me to escape from mental health. Like I usually go to TV, run to viewing something as a place to just like run away a little bit. So, when I'm watching a movie, that's what I'm watching. I watched, Don't Look Up last night and I loved it. For a minute, I was just kind of like, what's this movie about? Like, Don't Look Up. Like, what are they saying with that? And then when I watched the movie, I was like, they're saying a lot, honey. I loved it. It was so good, entertaining.
Yeah, what else have you both been watching?
Finished White Lotus and Nine Perfect Strangers.
I don't know. I've been watching a lot of the Academy movies and Come On, Come On, Mike Mills' film is really incredible. I want to see more of the films that are at Sundance, but it's like impossible to watch them because I'm in so much press.
Sorry.
I'm really excited to see Alice. I can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some really really great things in this year's lineup. It's been a real treat to watch them, and I'm sorry we're stealing your time so you can't, but you'll get to it, I swear. That I remember reading a while ago actually that you did an early pandemic interview with Dakota and mentioned rewatching Notting Hill early on.
Did
And
I?
yeah, it stuck with me because I'm a big Notting Hill, like Hugh
It's a
Grant
great
early.
movie.
Yeah, like a very nearly perfect movie.
Yeah.
But one, what is it you love about that, and also like what do you enjoy about that category of film more broadly, right? The rom com, the movies that like I think there's such a such a warmth to that. That's not just the romance, right? But it's like the way that everybody in that movie relates to each other.
Yeah, I love romance. I love romantic movies. I love movies where people end up together. That's hopeful to me. It's nice. I don't know. Also, Four Weddings, I watched in the beginning of that movie is just perfect. It's perfect. Like, it's a brilliant film. And I think it's a different style of comedy. It's not like goofy, it's not like a goofy rom-com. It's like really real and self-deprecating and intelligent. And I really appreciate that. I guess it's just my sense of humor, sort of. Not that I'm calling myself intelligent, but definitely self-deprecating.
I think that's fair. I think you're allowed to do that. Richard Curtis, who wrote those, is just like, I mean, going back and revisiting his work, the way that so much of that just still resonates and is still so so warm, right? So tender. Gosh, it's tough to think about getting a film landscape where we have all of that or have that more often, or it's hard to imagine, and yet it would be so wonderful to have more of that, to have more of that tenderness, more of that warmth. Yes, Keke, but I'm curious about you. What are your comfort watches different from the things that you've been watching recently, or are those specifically the things that you turn to, as you were saying earlier, for comfort?
My comfort watches are usually things I've seen before. I usually go to something a little bit more nostalgic. Could be an old sitcom or an old classic movie, you know what I mean? And then when I'm looking for something fresh, something exciting, something, new, then that's when I would go to some of these newer shows. But I'm a TV person. Obviously, I think television has been incredible lately. We've seen some really amazing shows that could have been movies, you know what I mean? But you love that they're a show because you kind of get that extra in that doesn't come after the movie finishes. So I've definitely been enjoying a lot of what television has to offer. I watched Yellow Jackets, so good. Different perspectives of these women from this soccer team that ends up, the plane crashes when they're headed towards their championship, and what happens after that. I mean, it's just so interesting what happens in their lives. So I love all types of stuff. I'm really that kind of person where I can watch really anything.
I mean, speaking of TV, now that we're like a month out from the Insecure finale, I can also ask you a question I've been dying to know about you, which is, in the final season, for those who don't know, Keke plays Condola's sister, who makes it extra clear what she thinks of Lawrence. And I remember just like thoroughly enjoying the Ashley Larry line, because like, first of all, Larry is like short for Lawrence, right? Like those are right. But what do you think of him, Lawrence? That is, like, what did you want? How did you want the like Issa, Condola, Lawrence triangle to get resolved?
I felt that her chemistry with Lawrence was so like just on point. So I did want her to be with Lawrence. But I love the way this show ended, and I love the whole idea of you can have your happy ending. You can make your happy ending what you want. Don't let other people tell you what your life should look like and what's good for you, what's not good for you. Like, do what makes you happy. And I think that was a lot of the thing with her and Lawrence, why they found themselves so in and out, was a lot of other noise, outside noise. And I think that happens so much in relationships, especially nowadays with social media and all these things. So I just loved how the show ended with Issa being like, I'm going to be a stepmom. I love this man, and this is my life.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you end up being on the show?
From a tweet. Yeah, I tweeted that I was a big fan, and I also tweeted like about, made a joke about how I wanted to come on the show and fight Condola. And then Issa's just so funny because she put me on the show and then put me on Condola's team, which I thought was just hilarious. But yeah, it came from a tweet, and then they reached out.
And I also heard you slid into Jordan Peele's DMs like years ago, like well before you. Okay, so let's. How did that happen? Like, what's going on?
So that's just who I am. I'm very
social media.
Yeah, I'm very real. Hey, I'm a fan. I'll let everybody know when I'm a fan of their work. I mean, there'll be times where I'll watch a movie and I'll look up the director and I'll try to find them on Instagram, or I'll look up the writer and I'll try to find the writer on Twitter or whatever, because I want them to know that I really, I mean, when I'm so I'm so passionate about the arts that when something really moves me or something really gets me, I want the artist to know, like, I see you, like what you did changed me or did whatever to me. And so with Jordan, I mean, obviously I felt that way after Get Out. It was just so, I think obviously everybody knows it was just so mind blowing. It broke so many film barriers, I think, in terms of horror, in terms of how to properly, you know, put Black people in the film, how to tell unique stories about us and use our culture, not as a way to stereotype us or to put us in a box, but a way to give our perspective truth and validity. And so I just remember, you know, just DMing him like I would any amazing creator and saying, what you've done is incredible. I really respect you, And I worked with him once when I was 17. He was like one of the first people that really, you know, thought about me in sketch, in comedy. And so he had me on Key and Peele. And that was the only moment we had. I sent that message, you know, he doesn't even read his messages. Even to this day, that message is still unread. But I just remember when I was like, sometimes I'll do this while I go to somebody's page. Have I ever contacted them or have they ever contacted me? And then I went and I was like, I messaged him back in 2017. And now in 2021, here I am working with him. But I mean, honestly, I don't know what it is about me, and maybe I'm a little bit of a witch, because literally one time when American Horror Stories first came out, I was watching the show and I was like, man, I sure would love to work with Ryan Murphy. I love this kind of work. It's so original and exciting and fresh. 2 years later, I ended up working with Ryan Murphy on Scream Queen. So I don't know. I'm gonna just, hey.
Hold on, I have a question. You can see if people have ever contacted you on social media?
Yes. So I have my thing on my settings set to, I can't see anyone's messages unless they follow me. So sometimes I'll go to somebody's page that I don't follow, you know what I mean? And I'll think, I wonder if they've ever contacted me. And so you click messages and then you'll finally be able to see if they have or if they haven't. I found out about it one time when I, you know, went to somebody who I didn't follow to message them. I seen they had messaged me all these things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder who else this has happened with that I haven't seen their messages. And so I do it all the time now.
Wow, how amazing.
Did y'all see there was a video a while back of T-Pain seeing all of the messages he had gotten that he had never seen before?
Who?
Wait,
Like,
again?
did y'all see there was T-Pain?
Oh,
there was
yeah.
like a video of him a while ago, right? Seeing all the messages that he had gotten, and everybody was like, "We love
so many. He has
Were
so
you one of
many.
them, Keke? Have you been sliding into T-Pain's DMs?
Not that time. T-Pain, unfortunately, not. But I do love T-Pain.
I guess who else have you been reaching out to that you want to tell us about? Like, or who else who are the other creators that you're like excited or itching or sort of dying to work with, whether it's now or, you know, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years in the future? For both of you, really.
Yeah, I'm like, what are the creators I'm dying to work with? I would love to work with Taraji P. Henson. Who else would I love to work with? It's such a hard, I mean, obviously it's a big dream of mine to work with Leonardo DiCaprio. I just think he's such an incredible actor. His role choices, the kind of stories that he finds, he's just so incredibly unique. Mick G, I would like to work with him as a director. The director who did, I just think his work is his aesthetics, his choices of the way his style of work looks. And I think it's very embedded in pop culture. And I'm a big fan of pop culture. So I just love his point of views and how he really, I think he attacks that so well. I mean, there's so many people. It was Jordan Peele, and I'm so excited that I got to work with him. There's so many, I mean, Quentin Tarantino, I would love to work with him. There's tons of people.
Okay, Dakota, what about you that you can tell us about? Because I know you have so much stuff coming up with Tea Time.
I don't know. What do you want to know? Who do I want to work with, or what's coming up?
First, who you want to work with, and then actually, what's coming up that you can tell us about?
There's so many people that I would love to work with. I really can't name I mean, So many. I had a meeting the other day with Michel Gondry, and I love him so much. I like really seriously love him. He's just a really fantastic person and I think a genius artist. And I have Persuasion coming out in this year. I don't know when yet, but then I have I think Tea Time. I think we're gonna make a film called Daddy-O with Christy Hall directing. She wrote it, and me and Sean Penn.
Oof, love Sean Penn.
Yeah, he's
So incredible actor as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Keke, when you were talking earlier about the roles that your mom picked for you as a kid, I was curious about when you started getting to have a little bit more say in that, and when, how formative those characters were in shaping what you wanted to do then.
Which characters were formative?
The ones that she had picked for you prior.
Okay, so I think those were, like I said, they really gave me a sense of pride. I think that's what they did in terms of shaping who I am, the impact that I saw that it gave to young people, some of these roles, Akilah and the Bee, True Jackson BP, it really just made me have so much pride in my purpose as an actor, what you can do, how you can impact people. I think I really realized on a positive scale what intentional and conscious work can do. And so from that moment on, obviously I didn't see any other way to do it. Nothing from me was ever frivolous, or definitely never about the money, and then to answer your other question, I think when I was about, when I was 14 or 15, I ended up doing a television show for like 3 years straight. So I was it was like no auditions, not much picking and choosing of anything. And then when I got out of that, I was 17. And that was when my mother and I had another conversation where she kind of said, because work was running dry. And as a child entertainer, there's like a lull where unless you just immediately start looking very mature, you're not really going to it's like really hard to get a role because you either are too young, meaning you're not over the age of 18 and they don't want to worry about child labor laws, or you are older, but you don't really look as old as the other people that they've casted. So it's really hard to get work for like a good 3 to 4 years in there, unless you are able to actively try to produce things, and are, prepared to go the, grind your nose to the ground route. And I remember my mom looking at me and just saying, you're 17, college is always a possibility. Do you think you maybe want to stop acting for now and go to school? Or do you really want to rebuild as an adult? And I said, I really want to rebuild. And so that's what we did. And so a lot of it came from, obviously, like I said, I did a movie called Pimp when I was 19. That was like a story about a young woman who was a pimp. Her mother was a prostitute and her father was, he died of a drug overdose when she was a kid. And it was just about her journey and understanding what life really is about outside of the perception she was given. And that was kind of like, that was me saying like, yeah, I want to be transformative. I really want to explore. And then from there, we just continue to go, and I continue to do the groundwork on my Instagram using my socials, because it's obviously not that easy in the traditional route. Always, if you don't have a lot of money and if people aren't really checking for you, it's very hard to get jobs. If you don't have any major connections, or, I didn't have any like that. You know what I mean? It was just me. I was the one, so I found a lot of empowerment from social media and being able to say, well, this is the kind of art I want to create. These are the kind of stories I want to tell. This is what I have to give. And that gave me a lot of freedom, and a lot of my opportunities also came from that.
Yeah, and I think there's a whole sort of generation of younger folks in particular who found your work through that, right? Who were like seeing your TikToks and your tweets and right, and are just like.
It's crazy to me. It's very cool though, but it's very crazy to me because some people were like, "Oh yeah, she's from Instagram," and I'm like, "That's so, that's so crazy," but it's cool to me at the same time because I guess it really is a moment of reinvention that I'm grateful for, because I've been doing this for about to be 20 years now. So I remember I did it when I did Nope. Someone on the set was like, "Oh, I see your Instagram. Like you're just another Instagram kid," and I'm like, "Really, love?"
Like, no, ma'am, no.
Like 20 years.
Right. And just because there's personality there that we all see doesn't mean the work isn't serious, right? You know, I was thinking about this when you hosted the Met Gala, which you were undeniably the star of last year.
Oh, stop.
Did you have as much fun hosting as the rest of us did watching that?
Yeah, I did, because you know why? Being at something like the Met Gala, you want to just talk. And a lot of times people don't want to talk. So I was happy that it was my job, because it gave me a reason to be like, let's just talk. You know what I mean? It can be so pretentious sometimes at, Hollywood events. Like, the sets themselves aren't pretentious. The process is not pretentious. We're all artists. When you're in the studio, that's not really pretentious. But for whatever reason, when it's like red carpet time, everybody's like, should I be a robot, or how do I act, or, am I perfect enough, or what kind of image am I trying to portray? And it can be hard when you're just like, a guest, because, you're really just, you don't, what is the proper action? But when you're working the event, or when you're interviewing, you're hosting, you get like, I get a way to be able to say like what I really want to say. I get to have actual real conversations, and no one is worried about, it's a little bit more like, whew, now let's just get into it, as opposed to trying to hold and carry this image, which is very uncomfortable for me. So I really love for me, my nervousness, my uncomfortableness is jokes, is talking, is being curious. So to be able to live in that space at an event like that, it was just like the most comfortable for me.
Yeah, well, before I let both of you go, do you have any more hosting gigs coming up where we can see you interviewing people and getting into it?
I don't actually have any more hosting gigs coming up recently, but you never know. Maybe right after this call, I'll get another call, and
I was going to say, tweet about it. As much as I would love to keep talking with you both about, just all of the things, especially various hosting gigs and various films that we could watch, I gotta let you both go. So Dakota, Keke, thank you both so much for talking with me today. And congratulations again on having such wonderful films in this year's festival.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.